All right, we're just going to give your classmates another minute or so to get in here, then we can get rolling. You guys excited to come back next week?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Classmates can join us as we are in progress. So, first thing I would like to bring to our attention is that at 7:12 this morning, I put out a new assignment called Arc Welding 5. You are to complete the following sections using the Miller Open Book website and complete the questions in the Google Forms. Preparation for arc welding. That is the topic we are going to be covering today in my presentation, and that is the presentation that you guys need to go through on the Miller Open Book website and complete the Google form associated with it. So, preparation for arc welding. Objectives. We're going to understand important aspects of pre and post welding. Preparation for arc welding. Preparing to weld on any project, there are a number of things to consider. I don't know why it says number. Oh, I guess the picture cut off the ER. That's what it is. Using only high quality welding machines, electrodes, and weld accessories. Miller's going to say that because they want to sell their stuff. I'm not going to sit there and dig on Harbor Freight equipment, but Harbor Freight would not be the stuff that I would want to put in my shop. Spend a little extra money and get yourself a more name brand, something like an ESOB. ESOB is cheap, but it's good. That's what we use here in the shop. Those are those little yellow machines. If you have the money, by all means, buy a Miller or a Lincoln. But if you're looking for low budget stuff, ESOB's a great alternative. Know the base material you are working on. Basically, what material are you working with? Is it aluminum? Is it copper? You know, steel alone, we have low alloy, high carbon, low carbon, manganese, medium carbon, stainless austenitic, stainless martinistic, and we have stainless ferritic. So just because you're welding on steel doesn't mean that all steel is the same. Okay, make sure you know what you are welding on. Select the proper welding process to give the highest quality welds in the least amount of time on the base material to be used. Even though TIG welding's pretty, TIG welding isn't always required. If you can get away with using a MIG weld, by all means, use a MIG. It's cheaper and it's quicker. TIG welding's also not designed for big, heavy-duty, thick stuff. If you have an inch plate that you need to weld up, TIG welding's not going to be your first choice. Select the proper welding procedure to meet the service requirement of the finished weldment. Basically, you need to know what your weld is being required of. Your blueprints are going to tell you, hey, it needs to be done in this position. Your weld needs to be this size. Things like that. You can't just weld. You need to know what the weld has to be before you start on it. Select the correct electrode. Once again, you need to make sure you're matching the base metal. You have the proper wire in there. There are many factors that go into it. The place that I work at in the summer, we use a wire called dual shield, which it is a flux cord wire, but also uses a shielding gas. And we have two different sizes, we have 052 and 16th. The deal is even though the 052 and the 16th wire are chemically the same exact thing, just in different diameters, the 16th wire you are only able to weld in the flat position. You cannot weld the 16th wire in the vertical position. The 052 is good for all positions. So making sure you've selected the correct electrode or filler metal, very, very important. When preheating is specified or required, make sure the temperature requirements are met. In any case, do not weld on metal below 32 degrees Fahrenheit without preheating. Preheating is something that occurs a lot in thicker material. I've worked on beams before where they needed to be preheated for about 48 hours before they could be welded on. Preheating you also need to do for things like cast iron and other steel alloys before you weld on them. Clean the base metal of oil, grease, dust, dirt, and debris. Mill scale on hot rolled steels may also need to be removed depending on the weld process and filler metal selected. Mill scale is kind of like almost like a coating and oxidized layer that can form on some steels, and it flakes off very easily, and it's full of impurities which can affect your weld if those impurities get into it. So it's always a good idea to make sure that if you're working with hot rolled steel, you get rid of that mill scale. Shield the weld area from any breezes that may disturb the shielding gas coverage. We all know that our atmosphere that we breathe is very bad for the weld. That's why we use a shielding gas or the flux on the electrodes. Thing is, though, is something like wind or even a fan can blow that shielding gas away, and now your weld is unprotected. So if you are in an environment where there is an air movement, you need to make sure that your weld is protected from that air movement. Do not weld over cracks or porous tack welds. Defective tack welds should be removed prior to welding. So here we have some wormholes. Right here you can see these. Those are bad. All right. If we were doing a multi-pass weld, we would have to grind all of that out and put another weld in without those. Because if you try to weld over these cracks or this ungodly porosity here, all you would do is have more cracks and more porosity on future welds. This right here, this porosity would require you to grind it all the way down to the root. This you could probably get away with taking it down until it's gone. This requires a full removal of the entire weld, because if you take it to where you don't see the porosity anymore and not down to the root, you're going to end up with porosity again. I can guarantee it. Plan the parts to be welded to maintain positioning accuracy. Tack welds can be useful to maintain positioning accuracy. The old rule of tack before you weld can help ensure the parts do not distort. For those that remember doing the butt welds, if you didn't tack both sides, by the time you got to the end, those plates were separating apart and you'd end up with like an 1/8 inch or 3/16 of an inch gap. So make sure you're tacking your stuff so that it can't move on you. If applicable, remove weld slag and thoroughly clean each bead prior to making the next bead or pass. This is very, very true on multi-pass welds. You can see here we've got a root, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So by the time they get to the top here, they've got 11 or so, maybe even 13 passes to fill this gap. If they're not cleaning that slag out 100% and making that thing shine before each pass, you're going to get what are called slag inclusions, and those are prone to cracking, to breaking, to porosity. And if this one gets UT'd, where they do like an ultrasonic test on it, they'll see that weld inclusion, that slag inclusion, and you'll have to sit there and grind it all out to get rid of it and re-weld everything. Be particularly alert to obtain root fusion on the first pass. Let's see what size, 16. So you can see here, we have over fusion, over penetration on the inside. We don't want that. Here we have under penetration because you can still see the raw edge. And here, this is the Goldilocks. This is just right. We have full fusion, full penetration, but we're not over. This is not good. This is not good. This is what we would be aiming for a gapped root pass. When root gaps of groove welds are excessive, build up one side of the joint prior to welding the pieces. So yeah, if you end up with gaps that aren't good, there you gotta make it work. When the root gap is excessive in fillet welding, be sure to increase the size of the fillet weld equal to the amount of the root gap in order to maintain the strength requirement. So you can see here, we've got, let's say, a 1/4 inch weld. Well, here we've got an 1/8 inch weld now, or we've got an 1/8 inch root gap, which means that our weld now needs to grow by an 1/8 inch. So instead of it being a 1/4 inch weld, it's now going to need to be a 3/8 weld to make up for that root gap. The welding code will specify how much will need to be done. In some cases, it may be an advantage to make a groove weld in order to avoid extremely large fillets. This right here should be a groove weld. Cut it down here, that way you can fill all that up, because a root gap like that is not very good. Inspect your work immediately. Remove any defective weld and replace it with a sound weld. So you need to check every weld as you go. Don't do 3 or 4 of them, then go back, chip them off, and go, oh, I didn't have my gas on. Now I have 3 welds I need to grind out. Every weld should be checked and inspected after you've done it. Don't move on to something else because you'll forget to check, or if you had a defect, you'll go, I'll get it later, and then you won't get it later. Observe the size requirements for each weld. Observe the size requirements for each weld. Make sure that you meet or slightly exceed the specified size. This is calling out for a 1/4 inch bottom, a 5/16 top. We got 3 inch welds on 12 inch centers, and we're using flux core wire. That's what all that means. Okay, so on the bottom, you should have a leg 1/4 of an inch long. Or wait, sorry. On the arrow side here, you should have a 1/4 inch weld. So from this leg to the root, from this root to the leg, you should have a 1/4 inch on each side. And then 3 inch long welds on 12 inch centers. On the back side here, you should have a 5/16 weld on each leg. And then 3 inch welds on 12 inch centers, all of it done for flux core arc welding. If you are supposed to give a 5/16 weld on this backside and you give a 1/4 inch weld, well, guess what? You have not met the requirement, therefore you are going to have to fix it. If they ask for a 5/16 weld and you give them a 7/16 weld, well, yeah, you hit the size requirement, but what you most likely did is A, you put way too much heat in metal, and this thing's probably warped way more than what it should be. You also probably spent 50% more time welding this thing up. That 50% extra time also probably means 50% more welding wire and gas required. So your company is now losing money because you just wanted to add a little bit extra onto it. We want to aim for just above what the welding print calls for. Make sure the finished appearance of the weld is smooth and that overlaps and undercuts have been properly repaired. Overlaps and undercuts cause welds to fail in service if they exceed allowable tolerances established by code. Undercut, you guys, is where we have a section of metal that's been melted out but not refilled in. And then overlap is basically too much metal hanging off to the side. Those are both very bad, and they both need to be fixed before the weld can be sent out. All right, so that was just our quick lesson for today. We are going to, as we move on in this class, things that we talked about in this unit, like porosity, undercuts, overlaps, things like that are going to make a major impact on your grade. So you need to make sure that you are paying attention to things like that. This class right here is without a doubt going to be the most technically challenging one out of all the classes so far. And I'm going to be very nitpicky when it comes to your guys' weld. Gone are the days of, oh, you completed the weld, well, I'll grade it then. No, if you do not give me the weld that I'm asking for, I ain't grading it, or it's going in as a 0. If you weld the wrong weld than what your blueprints call for, you'll either need to make a new one or take the 0 on the weld. That's basically how it is. Okay, so just be prepared for that. That is my lesson that I had for you guys today. We are, let me see here. We are here together until 9:25. That's when we switch to asynchronous learning. You guys can work on your homework until then, but I need you to stay in class until 9:25, at which point I will release you. If you have any questions for me, I'll be right here to answer them. Otherwise, work on your homework.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So like how the preheating thing, what would happen like if you didn't preheat it? Like, why do you need to?
Well, so for thick stuff, you have to preheat because otherwise that thick stuff holds on to its cold temperature, and if you try to put all that heat into the cold metal, you would make it very brittle and it would not weld very well. So by preheating it, by getting it closer to its melting temperature, you're able to actually weld it better. It's a little bit more malleable. And then as far as being above 32 degrees, you guys, you've seen before when cold things start warming up, they start to sweat and, release water and stuff like that. Same thing happens with welding, is if that thing's below 32 degrees, it's holding on to moisture. We go to weld it, that moisture is now entrapped in our weld, and it's going to give us porosity because it's going to start basically boiling over and exploding in the molten metal. So it's all about making the metal more weldable, essentially.
Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions for me?